This is lovely. Kenny Tate, as you mentioned color charts, I'm wondering what you think are the essential colors and paint types a small shop should have. Um, yeah, if you were only going to buy a very short list of paints, you'd get your black, your white, you'd get your matte spray, your gloss spray. You'd have primers, and frankly, all the primer colors are useful, white and black, but there's also gray, and there's also red oxide primer, which is frankly one of my favorites. If you're doing any shiny gold stuff, you want a red oxide undercoat. You want spray, but you also want some like I never don't have a gallon of black acrylic. I never don't have a gallon of black acrylic interior house paint. It's just like it comes up all the time. And I never don't have some Krylon clear coat. That stuff dries so fast and is so useful. Lately, I'm really interested in the color tone lacquers from StuMag. They are guitar lacquers, and they sell them in many different grades, but these are all refinements. Clear coat, black, white, primers, be able to do matte, be able to do shiny, and everything else is ancillary off of that. Okay, that's a great question, Kenny. And there was something I wanted to get comments about. Oh, I'll have to think about it. No Standard says, I've been an industrial maintenance electronics technician doing R&D, et cetera, for over a decade. How do I transition from 9 to 5 to freelance work? Problem solving is my passion, and I need more variety. I feel you on needing more variety. Look, transitioning from a 9 to 5 to freelance is really, really hard. You know, it's best done in tandem. So in the best of all worlds, you go in tandem. So you're doing your 9 to 5 at the same time as you're taking on freelance work, or even just as you start looking for freelance work. And still, no matter how many freelance clients you build up in that transition time of doing both, there's still a moment in which you have to leap into the void. That is totally for real. The moment that you quit your job will still feel absolutely petrifying. You're giving up a stability that you can count on for this new reality that seems to be like it's like the money's coming in, and like you can you've got some clients who like you, they like working with you, they give you freedom, you're solving new things every day. What happens in freelance is your job becomes two things. It becomes executing the work that you have and looking for new work. That's something that you don't have at your current job. And I think you're either constitutionally built for that or you're not. I mean, not to say it's not a skill you can learn, because you totally can. It's just, part of me wants to say it's not for the faint of heart, but I don't mean to self-aggrandize in any way around that. What I really mean to say is, please don't take my advice to go freelance without understanding the risks, emotional, temporal, financial, at the same time as understanding how scary it will be. You know, because I'll admit I suffered through many months over the course of raising my kids where, things were fat for a while and then things got thin for a while, and things got fat and things got thin. I went into a lot of debt at one point and dug myself back out of it. Put up a Craigslist ad, put up a picture of something you solved. Also, go on Craigslist looking for people who are looking for weird projects to execute. The hardest part of freelance is getting the word out about you. And the best way to do that, well, now, like, when I was freelancing, there was no social media. It's hard to overstate that. When I was freelancing, there was no Twitter, there was no Instagram, and I would have been all over all of those platforms with my freelance work if social media had existed. That is a spectacular way to get the word out about you and to meet other people like you who can also help guide you to other industries that may be looking for the skill base you have that you don't realize fits. That's the other one, is keep widening your net about what problems you believe you're able to solve. At one point, I called I said this just recently on a live stream, but at one point I called a company that built magic tricks for magicians in Las Vegas. And it was like, I think I could be really useful to you. And they were like, we absolutely would hire you if you moved to Las Vegas. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. That's the reality. Thank you for that great question, and good luck. That process you're going through of realizing that the work you've been doing for 10 years, you still need more problems to solve, that's great perspective. I always advise people to think about how they want work to feel. In addition to how you want it to be, how much you want to make, how hard you want to work, etc. How do you want to feel? Like, what do you want? What's the feedback from the world you want from working? And it sounds like you're doing that. Oh, this is great. Claytations asks, how do you approach research for your design? I'm in a set design class that is pushing me. That is awesome. But I'm struggling to figure out what I'm looking for and where to start. Yeah, that's great. The beginning of every research project is I don't know what I'm looking for and I don't know where to start. Every project of any kind begins with that, all the unknowns. I'm assuming because it's a class that you've been tasked with a problem to solve, and maybe it's as broad as like your own aesthetic take on something, but as far as where to start, I'm visually oriented. And I think in images. Actually, when I memorize lines, I literally memorize the paragraph on the page and look at, and like I can see it in my mind's eye. Often when I read something that's important to me in a book, I remember where on the page it was in the book. So I'm a very visual thinker. So my research always begins with a Google image search. And when I've exhausted that, a Bing image search. And when I've exhausted that, I don't know that I have a, oh no, I've gone to DuckDuckGo. Anyway, research always begins for me with just gathering imagery. And also I have a folder on my laptop. Actually, I'm open to this folder right now called Inspiration, where I put stuff that I'm curious about, but I have not yet executed, so I don't have an own folder for it. And it's full of all sorts of things I just find visually interesting, like, two dogs carrying a packaged Halloween costume. To me, one of the great Halloween costumes ever designed, and I someday want to do this for my terrier. So let's see, you're doing set design. So the other thing I would counsel you to look at is remarkable set design. That might even be a Google search that you do. You might be interested in certain kinds of, if you're trying to figure out, you haven't given me a lot of parameters to go on, so it requires me to think in the sort of the most abstract terms. But you have a visual problem to solve, which is a set that people will see that supports a narrative. And you're wondering how to fill that void and create something within that. For me, when I'm in that state, I'll tend to keep reading the source material that I'm working with over and over and over again. And I'm making notes about what it's calling up in my brain. And any little thing, like I think about Magritte. I don't know why, but then I'll just start looking at Magritte paintings to see if they inspire. And at a certain point in this process, so the beginning of the process is always a fire hose. It's just taking in all of this information. It might be written, it might be visual, depending upon what you're executing, but you're taking in this fire hose and it has no category to it. It is just all this disparate stuff. But always for me, within that process of turning on and receiving the fire hose, something along the line happens where it's like, one visual captures my mind and it's like that. And it might even be the smallest, like trying to hear the dimmest tone on a hearing test, kind of that. But when it arrives, it's that first thing that is usually what I think of as a metaphorical handle. out of which I can start to pull this aesthetic solution out of the ether. And it really is how I think about it. Arlo Guthrie talks about songwriting as standing by a river, waiting for a song to come by, and you pick it out with your net and service it. He then says that he doesn't think anyone downstream of Bob Dylan has ever seen a song. I love that extension of the metaphor. For me, it's a frying pan. I always see the handle of a frying pan. And maybe it's just from my Bugs Bunny cast iron frying pan humor bone that, like, that's the metaphor I go to. But within every kind of research that I have had to do in my life, there is always a period after the fire hose when something ticks in my brain, some flag goes up on the mailbox deep in my soul. And again, that becomes the handle with which I start to shake loose the aesthetic solution. Now, once I have that handle, now I've got something local to search for, and I start searching around that. And sometimes that leads me down the wrong path, and I'm like, this is not where I want. So you keep the fire hose going. Look for another handle. Here's another one. Okay, wait, now I search around that. Oh, wait, this is very rich. Oh, I didn't even know this went there. That's the most fun, when it takes you to a place you didn't even imagine that is also somewhat adjacent to something you're already interested in. Can you say, I'm getting goosebumps just telling you this. Fire hose, find the handle, shake it loose. This is also the way I researched all the science, frankly. I would be researching the science of viscosity, and it's an unknowing slog. I'm not a physicist. I have not trained in viscosity, so I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't even know what I don't know. And always, even within that framework, after a few hours of searching and reading and really trying to make the fire hose as big as possible, there's always this little ding that goes, wait a minute, what about that? And that, okay, so let's talk about what that flag is. That's your point of view showing up and going, hey, numbnuts, this is what you're interested in. I really think of us as human beings as receivers of our own aesthetics. Like, my aesthetic design brain doesn't come out of me. I find it in the world based on my point of view on what I like to look at. And so, frankly, I like to say I interrogate my aesthetics often after the fact. Quentin Tarantino likes to say that he writes his scripts in a fever dream and puts them out, but only after he makes the movie does he often see the cultural connections of pieces of the movie or the things that he's referring to. It's autonomic at the beginning, and then we learn about our own aesthetics by watching our work, looking at our work, taking it in and understanding it. It's a thrilling process, and it's also mystifying every single time. Every single time. There's a moment on the Atom and Carbonite video when I put on the first black wash and I say to the camera, I'm sure this is going wrong. And look, I knew that it wasn't going wrong, but also I was having this real emotion that it was going wrong. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know, everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the Tested membership has become such an important part of the Tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the Tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to. And you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.